Welcome to Contractor Cuts, where we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a successful contracting company.
Welcome to Contractor Cuts. My name is Clark Turner.
I'm Jared Flo.
Thank you guys for joining us again. So this week, we teased it last week when we were talking about our communication, but one of the biggest pitfalls that contractors accidentally fall into is when another contractor started a job, they either get fired or disappear, and a client then hires you to take over the job.
And it looks like easy, free money because the client's got, in a desperate situation.
I can jump right away.
You can come in and save the day, and it can really hurt you.
Yep. This is one of those spots, too, where our goal is to always be the driver of the car, not in the passenger seat. And now that the car is already on the road, the job is already started and halfway done or a quarter of the way done.
It's got a flat tire.
The homeowner's been burned and often wants to now, I'm going to hold the wheel because I can't trust anyone else to hold the wheel. And so we, looking at the job that we can jump into next week and get my crews going quickly, say, yes, I'll do it. And we're now in the passenger seat. And the entire job goes sideways, I feel like, all the time in the beginning when we're doing this. So
it is a very difficult thing to navigate. It can be done, but if you don't know how to watch out for the pitfalls and set yourself up for success, it's the percentage of it going wrong is very, very high.
If you don't have a game plan for a takeover, you have to say no to it. Do not do it unless you have these steps that we're about to go through or some sort of a game plan to protect yourself and your reputation and your money.
Of course I can do a takeover. I'm the best.
And you don't think about it. It doesn't run like any other job. So let's dive into it. We're going to list the problems with the takeover, the stuff that you don't realize is going to happen or does happen when you're taking over a job. And then we're going to go through our 3 steps that how we want it done. If you're taking over a job, do these 3 things. You are going to do it smoothly. You're not going to lose money, and you're going to keep your reputation.
Yeah. Well, and actually, keep your reputation. If you do it successfully, that client is going to rave about you. Because they had a really, really horrible experience, and you actually were able to come in and save the day, treat them right, give them what they wanted, and you're going to get heck of referrals off of it if you can do it well. But there are some common pitfalls that will cause you some issues.
So problem number 1 is that the client, not the contractor, was the problem.
That couldn't happen.
No. And never have I ever heard a client call me and be like, hey, I've just fired my contractor. Can you come take a look at this job? This was all me. It was on me that it all went sideways. The contractor did great. I just fired him because I'm a bit crazy. It's very hard to identify. We got some steps that we're going to talk through in a minute as to how we identify that, how we raise those flags. But here's what building a company is all about. I want our product so locked in, so airtight, that we can even manage the hardest, worst customers and give them a good experience. If I can give them a good experience, I can give the easy ones a good experience in my sleep. So I don't necessarily am going to say no to a customer with flags. I want to identify those flags and talk about those flags before we get started so we can still deal with that customer. But knowing those flags is the most important thing. What went sideways for them in their mind to make them this way as a person?
Right. Well, and that's one of the things to identify. Are they a nightmare client? Just period. Like beginning, they're just going to be a nightmare client regardless. Or maybe they're not and they're normal and whatever, but they have now baggage that they're going to bring into your relationship. They're going to start this, like you said, not trusting you, wanting to hold the wheel of the car and drive themselves because they don't want to get in trouble again. Even if you have a good reputation, there's a high possibility that they're going to come in with the desire and have some baggage of not trusting you.
I mean, the first thing that pops in my head is, have you ever dated a girl that just got out of an abusive relationship? Right? Like she's going to say, whoa, I don't trust, I don't blah, blah, blah. And then you've got to say, this is how we're different, and then you've got to back up how we're different and prove it throughout the job. So again, there's a difference of the client is the problem and the client has baggage from a terrible experience they just had. Right. And so identifying both of those and looking at those, we'll talk about in a second. But those are some of the biggest things that we see as problems when you take over a job is you're stepping into a really emotionally heightened experience.
Yep.
To where you might not know what you're stepping into, and they might have baggage, they might have a smile on their face today, but they're assuming day one you're guilty until proven innocent.
That's right.
And so dealing with that baggage, we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
Another problem that we've identified, non-visible workmanship issues.
Yep.
Right? If I'm coming into a job site that another company had already started and ran 20% of the job already, they already did the demo and started doing some electrical wiring.
And then they put the sheetrock up.
They put the sheetrock up, and now I'm taking over, right? That wiring might have been done wrong. They might have used the wrong wire. They might have not connected at a junction properly. There's a whole slew of things that could have happened that if we don't deal with it in our 3 steps,
Right.
we're going to get blamed.
Yeah.
We're going to be losing money, and we're warranting this stuff. And I'm saying, well, that's not my problem. And they said, well, you installed the lights, and they're not working, right? And so it's this whole this domino effect of they did something wrong, and now I'm losing money and my reputation for it. So I'm just not going to take the job.
It's very easy to walk into a house and see that there are 10 doors that are not hung.
Yeah.
Right? That's super easy.
Yep.
It's impossible unless you go through and demo to see, is the electrical done? Is the plumbing done correctly?
Yep.
Did they install flooring, and was there subfloor that was damaged that they installed over? There's tons of that type of stuff that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Or you can get into a big problem where they're blaming you for something you didn't even touch.
So that problem leads into the warranty issue, is that one of the biggest problems we see is what do I and what do I not warranty? And in the client's head, you're the guy that finished the job. I give you the final check.
Responsible
You
for
walked
100%
away.
of it.
The job needs to be perfect when you leave, right? And so getting clarity on that is super important and easily just overlooked during the process. So that's something that we talk about in a second. Another issue is a price increase, right? So we started the job, the other contractor started the job, and let's say it's a $50,000 renovation, and they've already paid the other guy $25,000. They're halfway paid on the job,
Right.
So they think in their head, this new company's coming in and it's going to be $25,000 to finish. Well, I come in and all of a sudden the bid's at $40,000 because I've got to rip out some stuff. I've got to redo some stuff. Even if I bid the job at $50,000 before and they chose someone else,
Right.
I am still going to have to reassess that. So they have an assumption in their head. I've paid $25,000 of the $50,000, so you should be able to finish this for $25,000, right?
Well, if in that scenario, if they've paid 50% of the money, the thought is that the job is 50% complete.
Yep.
Even if that is the case, that it is actually, the job is literally at a 50% complete status, I've got to back it back up to about 40 to undo some stuff to be able to redo it correctly. And so there's going to be an overage.
Yep.
It's not going to be a total all-in $50,000 job. You're going to be 55, 60, 65.
A great example of that pops in my head is my electrician. We've got a rough-in part of the bid, and then we got a finish-out part of the bid, right? The rough-in's done. The finish-out, I need a day's worth to finish it out. On the bid, it was previously broken up into 5,000 and 1,000, let's say, right? The finish out's $1,000. We're just going to do the little finish out that we have. The issue is I can't get my electrician to come out just for the finish out at that price for $1,000 left, right? He didn't get the 5,000 on the front end. It's not a $6,000 job that he accepted. I can't have someone come out and do all the finishes for $1,000. So that price in and of itself is going to increase to $1,500, maybe $2,000. Even though it's for the same exact thing that I might have bid before you'd pick someone else.
Right.
So that's where your price might increase that you got to think through because they broke down and we're not doing some of the items that we previously did. And they're breaking up our original bid where we had more group pricing on stuff.
Or things like you look at your rough in and let's say it's a basement.
Yeah.
You look at your rough in and you realize that tile shower that you're going to put in, if you go with their rough in, the drain is going to be off center by about 3 or 4 inches.
Yep.
Because they installed it wrong. They had to drill through the concrete to get it to a certain place, and they didn't go all the way through. Well, they've paid for it to be 100% done. If you want it that way, I can do it, but your drain's going to be off center by 4 inches. So any of those things can get into major issues about you're going to have to pay more money than your original quote was. And we'll get into how to deal with that later.
The last problem group that we've got is the old contractor and what are we tied to him with, right? So the permits might be in their name. I need to know about that. Who's are we transferring new permits? Are we transferring the permit over? Do we have to pull all new? What's going on with that? We've got liens that might happen, forced payments that might come in the future, right? They got $25,000 left for this renovation. Well, my bid went to 40, so they got to come up with $15,000. And the old guy put a lien on their house and wins in court for $10,000.
Right.
So now they're in it for $25,000 more than they had originally budgeted.
Yeah.
Do they have that money
Right.
if they lose that in court? Are they going to spend the money that they owe to me to pay off a court settlement over the lien? And now I'm out the money.
Yeah. Well, and have they been notified that they're cease and desist, do not do any more work? And if they have, do they have a generator on site? Do they have tools on site?
Yep.
Did they buy materials that are sitting on site? We need to know all of that information, because I don't need some guy showing up in the middle of my guys working, wanting to take a generator off site, wanting to pick up the sheetrock that he bought himself. We need to know all of that information.
And I would say the highest percentage of our job sites that materials disappear, tools disappear, and damage is done through vandalism are on takeover jobs. Because the guy's pissed. He's sitting at home having a beer, thinking about how angry he is that he lost that job and you owe him all this money. In his head, he's very reasonable and you owe him $10,000. If they're not going to pay me, I'm going to go get my $10,000.
That's right.
And so we need to have that conversation with the client. If stuff disappears from this job site, I just want you to know you are at an increased rate of people that get stuff stolen and damaged.
Yeah.
That is on you. If my tools get stolen out of this house, I'm going to need a change order to replace that, because that is a danger that I'm stepping into by taking on this job. And clients understand that if you say it up front. If you don't say it and you're trying to get paid at the end for a table saw that disappeared off your job site, then there's an issue. So you got to think through all that stuff. So we're going to go into the 3 steps of what we do to prep for this. But to give you a generalized statement for what we're doing is the whole addition to a normal job that we do for a takeover is about additional communication and expectation setting. Because our normal CEA, our normal walkthrough, is setting expectations.
Yep.
This one, we're tearing down old expectations. We're putting everything on the table to make sure that there's no unset expectations, and then we're building their expectations up as what they can expect from us. So this is a spot, and why we're doing this paired with last week's communication podcast is because this is where communication is the most important to either make you money or lose you money, make you a good reputation or lose your reputation.
Well, and it can, if you don't do it right, it can lose you money long term.
Yep,
because they can keep coming back to you and keep coming back to you of this is wrong and that's wrong, and it'll just drain you.
Yep, that's right. So let's dive into the steps to how we deal with these problems. So this is something of, if you do these 3 steps prior to starting a job with someone else, that's a job takeover, this is how we guarantee success in those situations.
Yeah.
So step number 1, right?
Yeah.
Let's run scenarios, and I'm better with examples.
Yeah.
Mr. Homeowner calls me up and says, hey, I know you bid my job a couple months ago. I went with someone else. I regret doing that. I fired them. Can you come out and give me a bid to finish this job out? I want to go with you guys. I'm going to pass it over. He's done some of the work already. Can you take it over?
Right.
Step 1 of what I'm going to do in that scenario, I'm going to say, absolutely. I love to discuss. I'm so sorry about this that situation. I want to either do it now or set up a time for an interview/meeting. It could be a phone meeting. It doesn't have to be in person. But I am now putting on my detective hat. I need to get down to the bottom of this. I'm not going to jump because it's a job that I can start next week, and I want to jump and run and get there as soon as possible. But I'm going to say, pause. Step 1, I'm interviewing the client like I'm a detective, and I'm trying to figure out 4 things. Number 1, what is the scope that you're looking to do, and what went wrong with the last client? So what are we looking at, right? If I haven't bid it, or if I have bid it before, I want to understand the situation, what's been done, what are you looking to get done, what's your final goal with the renovation, and along with that, what went wrong with the last guy? What's going on with him? Tell me. I want to know the intimate details of who said what and why, and where it went, why you started not trusting him. Because that's how, when we talked earlier, that's how I started identifying the red flags with the client, right? That's how I started identifying where the last guy fell short versus where the client had unreasonable expectations.
Right.
And you can hear that during this interview. I'm starting to feel those. And so I'm taking notes during this saying, okay, the person didn't communicate enough, and I asked how many times they communicated, and said, well, I talk to them every day. All right, so that feels like it might be a red flag on the client side.
Right.
They talk every single day, and they don't communicate. Right? So I'm going to start taking notes on all that stuff. So that's kind of the first thing I'm looking at. The scope, what's happened in the past, where are we at, why did the person leave, how much was done that happened on the job site. The next thing I'm looking for is let's talk about the money side of this. How much have you paid the previous guy, and what do you think has been completed? How much of the money you've already paid do you think is lost, and how much of it do you think you actually paid for work that was completed well?
Right.
Again, I'm trying to understand their mindset as to what they think the current status is. They might say, I've paid them half the job. I'm at $25,000 paid on the $50,000 job. And everything I've paid for is done except for I paid them for all the painting, and they're about halfway done with the painting. Everything else is done.
Right.
Everything else is good and paid for. I just want to move on. I get to the job site, and I can find 12 things wrong with the guy's previous work that the client now thinks, oh, that's completed. That looks good. We don't have to do anything about that. That later on they're going to ask me to warranty or fix for free.
Right.
Right. And so I'm asking, what have you paid? How much do you think is valid payments, and how much money have you lost? Because that lost money, we need to start calculating with them how much more they're going to spend than $50,000 on this renovation because they overspent on this guy. The next thing I'm looking at is I'm going to look at the previous scope. I'm going to go in, I'm going to pull up, I'm going to say, let me see what the last guy bid for you. I want to see his scope. I want to go through it line by line as to what you paid him when, and what you think is done on this scope and what isn't.
If it happens to be a job that you also bid on, you've got yours and the previous guy to kind of go off of, give you clues to see a line item that he wrote out that was limiting. It had a limited amount of details.
Yeah.
And you look at yours, an electrical line item, and it's way off on price. It helps you dial in, okay, that could be a problem. I need to make sure to investigate that.
Yeah. So, and the last thing that I'm doing in this interview is I'm trying to set expectations at the end of it with the client, saying, listen, just so you know, pricing is going to increase because A, I've got to fix the stuff that they did wrong, and B, I'm doing less work. I'm doing a $25,000 job, not a $50,000 job, and I can get group bulk pricing from my crews if I'm doing a larger job.
Yeah.
So price might increase from my original scope, but I'm going to spell that all out and exactly why that happens if that does happen.
Yeah.
I want you to be aware of that. I also want you to be aware that if we are going to continue this job and you are choosing for us not to redo some of that old guy's work and we're building on top of what he started, I can't warranty everything.
Right.
So I'm going to identify the stuff that I'm not going to be able to warranty, and we're going to have conversations about that.
Yeah.
A great example is the electrical wiring. They already wired everything. I need to put the lights up.
Yeah.
When I install the lights and they don't work, am I covering it for free to figure out and fix it? Or is it not being warranted because I don't know how he installed it? He could have had a bad junction box. He could have used the wrong wire. It could be, there's a number of things that could have happened that I'm not going to warrant. So I'm going to have that conversation now before we get there. Just like the CEA, I'm going to have the conversation so when we do cross the bridge where it could bother a client, I can point back to the conversations we've already had.
One of the things that I really love about this step, and I think a clarifying way of looking at it, is the detective and the consultant. The detective piece of it is learning every aspect of it that you can get, all the information, learning about the job, the money, the how the communication went, how many times was the guy. Like, understanding all of that stuff is incredibly important because it's going to help you dictate your steps of moving forward. But the consultant piece of it in this first step is the first level of starting to de-escalate their lack of trust. Right? It is you coming in and saying, look, I'm really sorry, like you said before, that this happened. I'm willing to come in, investigate this, and work to get you to a finished product. but these are some of the guidelines. This is some of the things that we're going to have to do. And even saying, I need you to understand that this.
Yeah.
And I need you to understand that if we do this way, I'm not going to be able to warranty that stuff. We're going to have some clarity.
Yep.
When I send you your estimate, line items will have labeled on them, this is a non-warranty item.
Yep.
So that there's, you're leading them in that first conversation by asking questions, doing the detective work to understand everything, but then you're leading them towards, okay, this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
This isn't his first rodeo.
Yeah. Well,
and so it gains that trust, or starts to gain some of that trust back.
And it goes from them being the boss and you working to get their job to a two-way interview.
That's right.
Right. And so these problems, I will talk about these with the client. Right. I'm going to say, listen, there's about 6 categories of problems that we deal with on a takeover. Number 1 is the client the issue on this.
Yep.
And from meeting you and knowing and the conversations we had, I'm pretty sure it's not that.
Right.
But in any relationship, both sides had unexpected or unmet expectations, and I want to know what that was for you, so that doesn't happen with me.
Right.
I want to make sure this relationship's good, and so you can talk through these problems,
absolutely,
and be confrontational in a good way, and listen, I need to know this stuff so you don't have the same experience.
Right.
It's an advocacy and leadership at the same time of I'm going to make sure that I advocate for you, but we can't repeat what just happened. So that's the step 1. We do that interview. We go through it. I've got all that information. I understand what's missing, what they want done. I have a really good picture of their expectations as to where the job is.
Right.
I like getting that before I go on site, because once I go on site, I can start now adjusting knowing where I think the house should be according to the client versus what I'm seeing, which is usually a lower quality product.
Right.
And so I can go in and say, well, I had this expectation walking in here, but that's not done, and this isn't done, and this isn't done. And she said that the paint was 50%. They might have primed it, but they need 3 more coats before it gets to that color, right? And so,
well, and I think in that space, one of the things that I love saying in that spot is helping them understand the perspective of the way that I'm going to come at this.
Yep.
I am not looking at the job that you want me to do as taking this from the 50% to 100.
Yep.
I am looking at this as if you have had no work done on your house and you're hiring me to get your house to the finished product. And so I'm going to come in and look at, you know what, they did 50% of the paint, but they didn't do any prep, and the client's not going to be happy with the paint.
Yep.
So I'm going to come in and quote you to do a whole new paint job, because that's what it's going to take to get you to the 100% that you want.
And if the client says, hey, I don't want a whole new paint job, I don't want to spend that money, just put one more coat on it, I'm going to say, I can do that, but please know that I'm not warranting that paint job. And if I put one coat on and you want us to repaint it, it's going to be even more expensive for us to come back out and do it again.
That's right.
So I want you to know that I can do it for the cheaper price and pick up where he left off, but you aren't getting the product that I know that you want.
Yeah.
And if you're fine with that, well, I'm going to put that in writing on the quote, which is what we'll talk about next. So,
well, and that's the next step.
Yeah, step 2
is
doing the estimate.
Yeah.
You're going to go through and identify.
I like to call it the inspector's estimate.
Yes, and
I'm going in like a home inspector.
There's 2 ways to do it. Pick what works best for you. You can write in the line item description, not warranty or no warranty, or you can build a box, which I like up top, that's $0 line item, but you're saying items that will not be under warranty.
Yeah.
Any electrical issues, the finished paint product, the blah 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 blah, and I'm going to list everything on the quote.
Right.
And so then I can say, if I go in and deem that the electrical is not good, I'm going to say I'm not giving you an option. I either replace the electrical or we're not going to do this because they use the wrong wire. It's a fire hazard and it's not going to get through inspections.
Well, and if you've ever watched an inspector walk a house, a good one, they open, touch, turn on, turn off, test, and that is incredibly important at this spot.
Yeah.
Even though you can visualize, okay, I see what it's going to take to get it from here to the end of the job, I can just quote that stuff out. If you don't go and turn on everything, test it, do the doors open and close, do the locks actually lock, right?
Yeah.
All of the stuff. If you don't do that, you're going to get into the job and you're going to end up with a trust problem because you're going to have to do change orders and then another change order and then every bit of detail that you can put to inspect the property and make sure that you've got everything covered is a huge part of getting a comprehensive estimate in front of this client that says, I know you originally were looking to get this done for 50 all in. You've paid 25 of that. I've investigated everything, and to get everything fixed that they didn't do right, and to get the quality of product that you want as your final product, it's going to cost $35,000 more, $15,000 more than you originally were intending to pay.
Yeah.
But these are the reasons why.
Well, and part of the inspector mode that you're doing during this estimate, act like you're you're an inspector for an insurance company, right? My time is spent best by identifying what we can and cannot pay for, right? And so even though you're going to do some stuff, some extra research on the job that's going to take more time, you're saving yourself money and reputation by not having to cover it. A great example, I want 200 pictures because the pictures are going to allow me to go back and say that wasn't us.
Right.
I want you to look, where did they wash their paintbrushes out? Because if it's all white paint all over the front yard, I might get blamed for that.
Right.
Is there an oil stain on the driveway? I'm going to get blamed for that. Did they walk in and out in the back porch and have sheetrock dust all over and they want their porch all pressure washed? I'm gonna be left with that. Now, in my brain, I look at that stuff and I'm like, yeah, that's not my problem. I'm here to quote the kitchen. But in the client's brain, they want the house 100% perfect by the time I'm gone. And so I'm going to have every single item that I see that even isn't part of the scope that might have been affected or damaged by the previous contractor. That's going to be written in my scope as stuff I'm not going to warranty or stuff that you can pay me to do. Right? I can fix that. I can pressure wash that back deck. It's going to be an extra $400, but we can get that right. And so talking through that stuff, no assumption of they must understand that that's not on me. I'm never assuming that because on the scope, I want to be as thorough as possible to have everything that I am covering, that I'm not covering, and the reasons why, if need be, on the scope before I sit down and talk with them again.
Right.
So that's step 2. You're doing a super estimate. You're doing an estimate with an inspection, and I'm gonna spend an extra hour on that estimate.
It's a CYA estimate.
Yes, because this is where we're gonna set our expectations that the previous guy missed setting expectations with this client, and so we're gonna have that all written out on that.
Step 3.
Step 3 after doing that estimate is we're going to do a CEA plus meeting. It's the same CEA meeting we do with everybody. You might have already done it with this client if they were considering you previously. Probably not, but you sit down, you do the CEA meeting, and we're going to add in the Job Takeover Addendum, right? We are adding one page to the CEA that if you are a ProServe Alliance member, we are going to be sending this job addendum out, the Job Takeover Addendum out to you guys. But this is a piece of paper that takes you through these 3 steps. And what that addendum says is pretty much everything you need to do is fill it out. That's going to be setting expectations and covering your butt. It's the warranty stuff. It's the understanding of change of pricing. It's a bunch of stuff on there that's super important. But the goal of this is to say, okay, here's our estimate. Here's everything I said on the estimate. Here's our client engagement agreement, which is setting expectations as to how this job's going to go. And included in that is a page that I don't need for most clients, but if I'm taking over your job, a page that is specifically setting expectations for what I will cover, what I won't cover, the price change. I think one of the good things about the price change on there is talking through it and looking and saying, hey, you are going to now spend $20,000 more on this job than you expected. I know previously you said that you were financing this through cash that you'd saved up. Do you have that extra $20K that you can spend on this, or do we need to pause until you figure out the additional finances? People don't like having money conversations. You have to do it in this meeting because if they don't have it, if they say, well, I'm trying to borrow it from my uncle. He said that he could probably give me a loan. Great. I need you to work that out and have the money in your account before we can get started because I can't risk that money. Right? To understand where my money is coming from is super important during this meeting because they might not have it. Right? And so that's part of the addendum and a bunch of other stuff.
I mean, basically the CEA for the most part is a divvying up of expectations and responsibilities. What can you expect from us, and what are we responsible for? And Mr. Client, what can we expect from you, and what are you responsible for? And in a job takeover, there are additional expectations and responsibilities that you have to have documented clarity on. If you don't, you're going to end up there's a slew of different things that can happen, but warranty is a big one. Who's covering what? What am I going to, and if you don't have clarity so that when you walk through that estimate with them and you show them this line item, we can't warranty. I'll fix it. I'll do this part of it, but I can't warranty it if it doesn't work. But if you have that and there's a clear understanding of it, there's no problems. They're not going to call you and say, hey, I need you to fix this. Because we've already talked about it. I'm glad to come fix it, but that was a non-warranty issue. It's going to cost you $600 and I'll get it done for you.
That's right.
Right? So it's just an additional add-on that has some more clarity of responsibilities and expectations.
Again, this is the list of 1,000 things that we've done wrong that we've learned from, and we're helping you guys do it better, where you don't have to pay the penalty of learning by doing it the wrong way the first time. So,
but like I said at the very beginning, if you can do this well, you have a lifelong client, and a client who is going to scream your name from the rooftop, because they were super frustrated. They were worried they were going to be out of money. It wasn't going to get done, and you came in and eliminated headaches. Got it across the finish line for them, and they're going to be super happy about it.
That's right. So if you want this paperwork, let us know if you're a ProServe Alliance partner. We're going to send it out pretty short here in the next few weeks, where everyone's going to get a copy of it. And if you are new, we'd love to walk you through it. If you want some software, we'd love to talk to you about that. We've got some really cool stuff happening with that. But we love to give you this, walk you through it. This is just one of the how many documents? 45, 50 documents 50 we've got that we walk you through when you come on with us and as a partner. We don't give you all 50 at the same time. We walk you through. This is not as important as a CEA. This is not as important as a subcontractor agreement. This is not as important as those other things. So we roll this out in time as you come on with us, to where now that you've got the basics and the fundamentals down, let's add on some of these paperwork.
When a contractor that we're coaching calls us up and says, hey, I need some advice. Hey, this client called me, wants to take over their job. Help me with this. All right, check this document out.
Exactly.
So
thank you guys for listening. Appreciate it. We will see you next week.
See you then.
Bye.